I met my girlfriend, let's call her Diana, when I was living in a bustling city. She worked at the same office as I did. We had known each other for like a year or two when we started dating. She would tell me stories about her hometown and the paranormal activities that occurred there. She was one of those people who are deeply interested in the paranormal. I did not believe her stories, because I didn't believe in paranormal stuff. She would always look so full of life whenever she talked about paranormal activities or stories she had heard from other people. After a few months since we started dating, she got a job at her hometown and moved there. I wanted to go there with her, but there were no job openings there. Not for the first few months at least. I applied for a few jobs in her town and finally was able to land one. I could not wait to see her again because I hadn't seen her for months. I remember how Diana and her family welcomed me with open arms when I first entered the town. They fed me delicious food at her home and I formed bonds with her family. In addition to her parents, she had a little sister who was the world to her. Her sister was called Lily. She was a shy, quiet little girl who barely spoke to anyone. Diana had told me how often Lily got sick, and how no doctors knew what was wrong with her. Diana would tell me how she and her family thinks that something else was causing Lily to get sick so often. On that day when her family welcomed me, her dad Daniel took me into his room. I wondered what he was trying to do. "Son, I heard that you're gonna live in this town," Daniel said, his gaze fixed on me. I nodded in response to his question. "Then there are rules that you must follow." Daniel cleared his throat. "Do not fish at the pier past 12 a.m. in the night. Do not go into the woods past 9 p.m. And finally, do not go anywhere near the beach to the south at sunset. This final rule is one you must never break under any circumstances." I nodded, even though I did not believe him. I believed that everything must have a scientific explanation and paranormal stuff are made up by people as a way to pass time or for entertainment. After that, I went back to dine with the rest of the family. The rest of the day went normal. Obviously, I couldn't stay at Diana's house, so I ended up renting a place close by to her place. We would go on dates occasionally as I got used to her town. Even though I did not believe her father Daniel had said, I avoided breaking the rules he mentioned out of respect for him. One day, when we were on a date at a local cafe, I brought up what her dad talked about with me. His list of rules. "Yeah," she said. "As long as you are not there at the times my dad mentioned, you're safe." I have to admit, the creepiness of those rules were getting to me. At first, I had thought that this was all a ploy by her dad to get me to break up with her. But seeing as how she herself validated his rules, I was not so sure anymore. As I grew more accustomed to the town, I would go to this beautiful beach to relax. I would use this swing in the woods that led to the beach. I could get a good view of the beach from there. There was always this one kind old lady, let's call her Matilda, who would talk to me whenever she saw me there. She would come there almost every evening to get wood to burn. I enjoyed those days. I enjoyed our conversations. She would tell me stories of the past, about the time when she was young. And at every day, when sunset draws near, she would hurry home after telling me that I should not stick around longer, even though I would have done so without her telling me. And one day, when I was chilling on a bench at the beach at evening, I fell asleep, because I had not slept well the previous night. I had a strange nightmare of an old man strangling me when I was on the bench and woke up. No one was there. It was quiet, with the sound of waves splashing. It was dark, with the clouds in the sky shaded with red. I looked at the time. It was already sunset. All of a sudden, I felt a chill run down my spine. Like I was not alone. I quickly got back into the woods, to go back home. As I was walking in the woods, I saw the old lady. The same one who would always talk to me in the distance. She was standing completely still, with her back turned. I did not notice it until I got close enough to her. She had no feet. And she was hovering above the ground. She turned around to look at me. Her eye sockets were empty, and she was grinning from ear to ear. It was not humanly possible. The minute that happened, I heard sounds of women laughing from all directions. They sounded hysterical. I covered my ears and turned my eyes away from her. And then, when I looked at where she was before, she was gone. I ran as fast as possible. The laughing voices were still there, echoing from all directions. Their volume did not change no matter how far I went. I covered my ears and made my way towards home. The people on the street shot me weird glances, as though they were staring at someone who went insane. As soon as I entered my house, the laughing voices stopped. It was as quiet as it had always been. I went into my room and plucked the courage to look through the window. Nothing was out of the ordinary. I looked at the sunset sky and wondered if this was going to continue. At that point, Daniel's warnings replayed in my head. Don't go anywhere near the south beach at sunset. I wondered if this was the beach that he had talked about with me before. I was worried about what might come next. I stopped going to that beach. But the feeling was always there. I felt like something was watching me no matter where I went. Sometimes, I would feel someone touching my shoulder or pull my clothes lightly. And no one would be there when I would turn around to look. I did not tell Diana nor anyone about this. I believed that it was my burden and my burden alone. I did not see the old woman either, for days. Ever since this happened, I used my free time to walk around town. I did not pay attention at the time, but I would never see the old woman when I walked around town. Many days passed this way, without further incident. One day, as I was going back home from work, I noticed the old lady standing there in the woods. She gestured me to come closer. But I was too afraid to go to her. She kept gesturing over and over, but I paid no heed to her. As I passed by her, I gave her a glance. She looked normal, like she usually does. I still could not get over how creepy she looked at sunset on the last day I saw her. Seeing how she looked normal, I told myself that whatever I saw and heard the other day must have been my imagination. As soon as I went up to her, she smiled. "Hey, Sonny," she said. "It's been a while since we last saw each other. How have you been doing?" "I have been fine, I guess," I answered. "Sonny, I have a present for you. Can you come with me?" the old lady eagerly asked. "Sure, I guess," I answered with a moment of hesitation. After gesturing me to follow her, she took me to her house in the town. It looked beautiful, as though it was built yesterday. It was filled with lights. Upon entering her house, I noticed that it was completely empty. "Do you live here alone?" I asked, my tone curious. "Yes. I have a few children, but they are all out of town," she answered. She led me into the living room and gestured me to wait. The house was well lit, with a lot of colorful, small lights. It looked as though the house was prepared for a party. Not too long after, she brought me a slice of chocolate cake. "Take a bite, Sonny," she said eagerly. Without wasting any time, I took a bite from the chocolate cake. But the minute I did that, it tasted like mud, and I instantly spat it out. The old lady was still there, observing me eagerly. She started laughing. "Sonny, take another bite," she said. "It tastes terrible," I said to her. She looked disappointed. And then she took the cake slice and went out of the living room. I was puzzled as to why the cake tasted like mud when it was clearly a chocolate cake. I still had the bad taste of it in my mouth. It was enough to make me feel extremely nauseous. I could not stay there any longer, so I went out of the house and rushed towards mine. I was getting weird looks from people on the street again. Like I was an insane person. I could not stop to think about it at the time because I was too nauseous. As soon as I got back home, I vomited in my bathroom on the toilet. I did not look at it and flushed the toilet. My whole body felt weak, as though I had a bad fever. I laid down on my bed to rest and fell asleep briefly. I woke up from my phone ringing. It was Diana calling me. I picked up. "Babe, are you okay?" Diana sounded worried. "Yeah, I'm okay. Just feeling a bit nauseous, that's all." "I'm feeling better now," I said without thinking. "That's good," she said as though she did not believe me. I sensed that there was something odd. She was unusually silent and did not say anything for a while. "Babe, please tell me the truth," she said, with a serious tone. "What were you doing at the graveyard?" A chill went down my spine. I was genuinely puzzled at her words. "I did not go to any graveyard." "What?" "I didn't go to the graveyard since I came to this town," I said, genuinely confused. "Babe, a lot of people saw you at the graveyard eating dirt," she told me. "You left before anyone could intervene." Hearing this chilled me to my core. Was I losing my mind? Was I actually eating dirt in the graveyard? Or did people mistake me for someone else? Recalling what happened in the past, I came to the conclusion that what my girlfriend was telling the truth. We talked a bit more and she genuinely sounded worried. After that, she hung up the phone. On the next day, as I finished work, Daniel called me and asked me to come as soon as possible. So I went there. I knocked on the front door and Diana opened it. She looked worried. She gestured me to come in, so I went in. She led me into the living room and had me sit down on the couch. She sat right next to me and held my hand tight. A few moments later, Daniel entered the living room and sat down next to Diana. "So, son," he started. "I hear that you did some questionable things in the graveyard." There was silence in the air. I hesitated to talk. "Well," Daniel broke the silence. "Because this happened, you must have stayed on the South Beach at sunset." He was right. I nodded. His expression changed to a slightly angry one. "Son," he said, "I told you clearly. Do not stay at the South Beach at sunset." I explained to him what had happened to me there in full detail, as well as everything that happened between me and the old lady. "I see. You've been seeing this old lady almost every evening?" Daniel asked. "Yes," I answered. "What did she say her name was?" Daniel asked. "Matilda," I answered. Daniel's eyes widened. I looked at Diana. She had the same reaction. There was silence for a few moments. Son. Daniel replied. Matilda died years ago. She is my mother. And she is Diana's grandmother. It shocked me to my core. I could not believe it. This meant that the old lady I was talking to all along was Diana's grandmother? Questions popped up in my head one after the other. Why did the old lady lie about her children being far away if she was a ghost? Was she evil or something? So that's the shape it took, huh? Daniel said, as though he was talking to himself. What do you mean? I asked him. That nasty thing. It's not real. She is not real. That is only one shape among many others that nasty thing takes. Daniel said. Even my daughter Lily Dash. Daniel suddenly stopped. It's okay, Dad. Diana reassured him, holding his hand. My daughter Lily. Daniel continued. That thing is tormenting her too. We only realized it recently. I was shocked. So the thing that has been causing Lily to get sick all the time was that thing? Almost right at that time, Lily entered the room. She looked at me and smiled. Mr. Humpty likes you, Big Brother. Lily said to me. Mr. Humpty wants Big Brother to hang out with him. Cool me. Before I could answer, Lily was pushed away by an unseen force. And she started struggling against something on the ground. It was as though something invisible was trying to strangle her. Before we could reach her, she stopped. She had passed out. Daniel took her in his arms as he cried. He was whispering something that I couldn't quite make out. After that, he went out of the room. I could see Diana covering her face with her hands, crying. I tried to console her the best I could. When she finally calmed down, I asked her to tell me everything. She told me what happened. They were having a barbecue in the evening, near the woods with their neighbors. Lily was playing with a few girls her age. When they took their eyes off Lily, she disappeared into the woods. They searched for her all over the place, only to find her standing still at the South Beach at sunset. She had been acting like that ever since that event. She would get frequently sick and would not be able to get out of the house. According to Diana, they were a safe distance away from the South Beach. She had no idea about how Lily went to the South Beach through the woods. There was no doubt in my head about it. Lily went through the same thing I did. Diana also told me that people who have been targeted by the entity see it in different forms. For me, it was in her grandmother's form. For Lily, it was someone/something else. Diana told me that someone was brutally murdered by some thugs at the South Beach at sunset nearly 40 years ago. I knew what she was getting at. It was his vengeful spirit that was haunting the South Beach. Obviously, it was a lot for me to take in. My entire world has changed within a span of a few days. Above all, I knew that whatever that thing was, it wasn't done with me. Deep in my heart, I wished that thing would leave me alone. As much as I did not want to believe that it was real, I did. I wondered why others were fine even though they went to the South Beach at sunset. Why Lily? To this day, I'll never know. Diana didn't seem to have an answer either. In the following days, the activity intensified. I would hear distant laughing, talking nearly every time I went outside. Activity started happening everywhere except my home. The other day, my coffee mug was pushed by an unseen force, breaking it to pieces when it hit the floor. Another time, I would see shadow figures moving at humanly impossible speeds. So I reduced the time I spent outside. My contact with Diana was very limited. I could not pick up her calls, even though I knew she was worried. My mind was just too occupied with the activity that was happening to me. The activity at my workplace worsened as I stopped going outside except when I had to work. The shadow figures I would see in my workplace evolved into unnatural entities. One particular day, as I was working past the normal hours, without anyone else but me, I caught something in the corner of my eye. In a cubicle in the same row as mine, was a shadow-like face with no features except for its gigantic eye. Only half of its face was visible. I jolted. As if noticing my movement, it put its head back in the cubicle it was in. It was only there for a moment. I did not take my eyes off the cubicle it was in and went up to that cubicle. To my surprise, the cubicle was empty. I was too scared at that point, so I was about to go home. As I reached the exit, I saw a creature. The same creature from before. With its gigantic eyes. This time, its face was visible. It was a distorted face. Its body was like a bodybuilder's. It had 8 legs that on its human-like torso. It looked very much like a spider. Upon seeing it, I heard hysterical women laughing from all directions. At least, that is the thing I remember before fainting. On early morning the next day, I woke up in the graveyard without knowing how I went there. I looked at the visible parts of the street. There was no one around. Figures since it was early morning after all. I quickly hurried towards my house, my body aching with pain. After reaching my house, I decided to call anyone who can help me. I reached for my phone in my pockets, only to realize that it was gone. I was too scared to be outside, so I couldn't afford to go back and search for my phone. So I went inside my house and took a shower. The weight that I had felt the whole time was gone as soon as I entered my room. That was when I noticed the wounds on my body. There were scratches and bruises everywhere. What happened to me last night, I wondered. Still, the image of the spider-like creature lingered in my head. Those gigantic eyes, the distorted face. If possible, I never wanted to see the creature again. After showering, I lay on the bed, thinking. Not too long after, I heard knocks on the door of my room. I opened the door. It was Diana. She looked very worried and sad. She asked me to tell her everything about what has been happening to me. So I did. She called her dad and told him the whole story. She and her dad offered to help me with this situation, and I accepted gratefully. I had heard that Lily went through this similar experience, and with the help of some exorcists, it is not as intense anymore. Ever since that, I haven't gotten out of my house much. I am currently taking leave from work, thank God for vacation leave. I've seen a few exorcists, but my condition hasn't improved. Every time I go out of my house, I see that spider-like creature in the shadows, looking at me. Sometimes, it disappears, other times, it runs towards me with inhuman levels of speed and I would faint, only to wake up with scratches all over my body. Oh, and I also figured out that staying in my house keeps it away. So I am spending more and more time in my house. Diana is helping me with food and errands. Thank God I have such a wonderful girlfriend like her. I am too scared to go outside anymore. At the same time, I am wishing to be rid of this curse, ghost, spider, or whatever it is. So I'll remain in my safe haven until exorcists are able to get rid of this entity.